Good day everyone, so we are the group 1 and we're going to discuss about the elements of visual arts. So before we go to our main topic, let me first define what is visual arts. So when we say visual arts, it is the arts that met the eye and evoke an emotion through an expression of skills and imagination. So those mediums in art that can be seen and occupy space is consist of visual arts. So those artists in visual arts create an art forms or artworks such as ceramics, drawing, painting, sculpture, printmaking, design, crafts, photography, video, filmmaking, and architecture that is primarily visual in nature. So in visual arts, it has 7 elements, and the elements of visual arts is the building blocks of art and design. So those 7 elements of visual arts such as line, shape, color, form, value, texture, and space is part of creating and composing of artworks that in any aspect can be seen in visual arts. So for further discussion, my group mates will discuss and elaborate those 7 elements of visual arts.
Good day everyone! It's with a great honor for me to share some of the important information about arts and its elements. Let's start about what are the elements of arts. The elements of arts are the tools that artists use to make art. There are 7 of them. The first one is line, value, texture, shape, form, space, and color. So what is line? A line is a path that a point takes through space. Line can be thick, thin, dotted, or solid. They can make straight movements, zigzags, waves, or curves. As you're watching this video, try to look around you and you'll notice that wherever your eyes go, you'll find lines. Whether your roof, your notebook, your phones, or even your body has its own lines. To further discuss, we have 3 types of lines. They may be horizontal, vertical, and diagonal. Horizontal lines are generally restful like the horizon where the sky meets land. So, pagkaya nga ng example yung sky and the land. Kumbaga makikita mo sa picture na merong horizontal yung pahiga. So, let's come now to the second one. The vertical lines seem to be reaching, so they may seem inspirational like tall, majestic trees or church steeples. Kagaya ng example na trees and yung church. And another example, yung Eiffel Tower. Diba? Ganyan siya. Kita mo yung vertical line. So, the third one is diagonal lines tend to be disturbing. They suggest decay or chaos like lightning or falling trees. Yung diagonal lines, ito yung nakaka-distract sa atin. Kumbaga yung mga art na nakaka-distract. Pero wag mo namang subukan na picturean yung kidlat, baka ikay kumakan. Lines can convey emotion as well. They may show excitement, anger, calmness, tension, happiness, and many other feelings. Because of this, some are said to be expressive. So, diba, example din kapag nagsusulat tayo, kapag namali, na-express din natin yung lines, na-express natin yung line through our emotion. Kumbaga namali tayo, diba, yung pagsulat natin yun na maintindihan. So, lines tend to be found in nature and are very organic. Other lines that are very measured, geometric, directional, and angular are called constructive lines. They tend to appear to be man-made because their precision. I remember when I was a kid, my teacher taught me how to draw a perfect line. We've tried and tried to make a perfect line by making different artwork. I firmly believe that learning line is the most wonderful things I've learned. The significance of line is everywhere. We can definitely define life by simply watching what's around us. And that makes line important in art. Line becomes the bedrock to narrow the meaning and emphasize figures, colors, the object and the subject. Most importantly, line makes art visible. With line being absent, art is nothing. That's all. Thank you. So, let's come now to the second reporter.
Gonna be discussing about one of the elements of visual art, which is color. Color is the basic elements of art that involves light. It is produced when light wave or wavelengths strike an object and are reflected into our eyes. Each light wave has a distinct color. Objects appears to be different colors because some wavelengths are absorbed while others are reflected or transmitted. The wavelengths that are reflected back to our eyes give us colors we see. There are three properties of colors, which are hue, intensity, and value. First, hue refers to the dominant color family and refers to the origin of the colors we can see. For example, are yellow, orange, red, violet, blue, and green, and etc. are considered as hues. Second is intensity, and also called chroma or saturation, means the purity or dullness of a color. A color's purity is determined by whether it has been mixed with another hues. A color as we see it on the color wheel is full of intensity, which means bright. When we mix it with gray, black, or white, it becomes dull. Colors also lose intensity when mixed with their complement. When we combine a pair of complementary colors on our palette, the original colors lose their intensity. For example, adding a little green to a bright red will make the red duller. Third one is value, means the lightness or darkness of a color. Adding white or black to a hue changes its value. A tint is created when white is added, while a shade is made when black is added. Look at the example number 1. It is a good way to see the difference in the values of a colors. White is the lightest value while the black is the darkest value. Middle gray is the value halfway between the two extremes. Look also the example number 2. A color's value can be changed by simply adding white or black to it. When you add white to a hue, you get a lighter value, and we can also call it tint. When you add black to a color, the value darkens, and that's called shade of that color to a color wheel. Sir Isaac Newton developed the color wheel in 1666 when he took the color spectrum and bent it into a circle. The color wheel is useful visual aid used by artists and interior designers to understand the relationship between colors. The color wheel is a circular chart divided into 12 sections, with each sector showing a distinct colors. There are 3 categories of colors in it: the primary, secondary, and tertiary color. The primary colors are red, yellow, and blue. These hues are equally spaced apart on the color wheel. There are only 3 primary colors, and they are the most basic colors on the wheel. They can only be made from natural pigments and cannot be made by mixing other hues. These 3 primary colors can be blended to create any other color in the color wheel. Secondary colors are orange, green, and purple or violet. These colors are created by mixing equal parts of any 2 primary colors.
For example, red plus yellow, it becomes orange. Yellow plus blue, it becomes green. Blue plus red, it becomes violet or purple. Tertiary colors are red, purple, red, orange, blue, green, blue, purple, yellow, green, and yellow, orange. There are 6 tertiary colors and they are the result of mixing equal parts of a primary colors with a secondary colors. The proper way to refer these tertiary colors is by listing the primary color first and then the secondary color. That would be all. Thank you for listening.
Good afternoon or good evening to each and everyone. So, my name is Andrea Soriano, the one who assigned to report one of the elements of art, the shape. Everything we see around us is shapes. Shapes are defined objects in space. What do we know about them? Ano nga ba yung pagkakaintindi natin or ano yung alam natin about dito? In the picture, you will see the painting named The Blue Fan by Francis Belboiro-Cadell, year of 1883 to 1937. So, ano nga ba yung nakikita niyo sa painting? What are the objects? So, the objects are the bowl, the jug, the font, and the table. So, these objects and painting may be read as two-dimensional pattern. This is a series of colorful still lifes by Francis Cadell. So, our world is composed of variety of shapes, some of which, because of constant use, have gained permanent meanings. They can be used to simplify ideas classified according to the series. So, shape is a flat enclosed area of an artwork created through lines, textures, colors, or an area enclosed by other shapes such as triangles, circles, and squares. So, there are two major types of shape in art, the geometric and organic. The geometric shapes are mathematical and include squares, circles, and triangles. It also defined by a set of points or vertices and lines connecting the points in a closed chain. Initially, geometric shapes are commonly recognized, such as the squares, circles, hexagons, rectangles. Kasi diba yung nasa pictures, a simple shapes lang yung nakikita. Basic shapes lang. Good. So, geometry, they are perfect and regular shapes. They characterized by straight lines, angles, and points. Examples of geometric shapes are the buildings, the pyramids, the cylindrical towers, and the office buildings. Yes, are the example of geometric shapes. Next, the other types of shape in art is the organic shapes. Organic shapes are irregular or asymmetrical. Organic shapes are those we see in nature, such as shapes of man, shapes of animals, and trees. Example, like in the picture, di ba simpleng photograph lang siya? A clouds, a sky, a trees, a leaves, and a house either. So, dun sa picture, parang may nabuo ng shapes. Yung clouds, may nabuo na. Yung parang mga dahon-dahon, nabuo na. So, tinatawag rin siyang free form and often one act of a kind kasi nabubuo sa ating isip. So, the other examples of organic shapes are below. The leaves, the trees, the flowers, a hand, a foot, what do you call about the snail, parang bahay ng snail, the mustache or beard. So, next slide, the perspective of shapes. Are the angles and curves of shapes appear to change depending on our viewpoint. The technique we use to describe this change is called perspective drawing. Ang example niyan is the organic shapes, yung example doon na picture. Diba? Kung ano yung nakita natin sa isang bagay or sa isang object or gano'n, kung ano yung nakita natin, parang yun na yung viewpoint natin dun sa shape na yun. Kung ano yung nakita ng mata natin at kung ano yung nabuong shapes, ganun. Yun. That's what we call the perspective drawing. Our viewpoint. Next, the behavior of shapes. Shapes can be used to control your feelings in the position of an artwork. The squares and rectangles can portray strength and stability. The circles and ellipses can represent continuous movement. The triangles can lead the eye in an upward movement, and the inverted triangles can create a sense of imbalance and tension. So basically, hindi lang siya basta shapes, kundi may kanya-kanya rin silang meanings and backgrounds. And lastly, the examples of shapes in painting.
In conclusion, a shape is created when a line is enclosed. Shape is one of the 7 elements of art, and it has a variety of uses in the creation of art. Shape is a two-dimensional area that is defined by a change in value or some other form of contrast. All shapes are two-dimensional, meaning that they have only length and width. All shapes will fall into one of 2 categories. Geometric shapes or irregular shapes are easy to recognize, while the organic shapes or freedom shapes are shapes that seem to follow no rules. Organic shapes generally do not have a name associated with them and are typically not man-made.
So, that's all for today. Thank you for listening.
Elements of visual arts. Space. Space is the basic art elements that refers to the distance between the area around and within shape, forms, colors, and lines. There are another definition of space. Space can be positive, white or light, or negative, black or dark, open or closed shadow, deep and two-dimensional or three-dimensional. That picture shows the difference between the positive and the negative. There are the 2 types of space. Positive space. Positive space is the area or part of the composition that an object or subject occupies. This is usually the main focus of the painting. Sa madaling sabi, ito ang bahagi ng komposisyon na sinasakop ng isang bagay o paksa. Ito ang main focus ng mga magpipinta. Negative space. Negative space is that empty or open space that surrounds an object. It helps define the object, give it some breathing room to prevent the painting from being too crowded and significantly impact how the art piece is perceived. Ito ang walang laman o bukas na puwang na pumapaligid sa isang bagay. Ito ang nagbibigay pansin para makita ang kalagahan ng isang scene. By understanding the difference between the positive and the negative, you will, number 1, become better at designing unified composition. Number 2, be more successful in visual communicating your story. Number 3, gain important clues about the meaning of an art piece. Why is negative space so important? Anyone? Ding dong ding! Okay, I will give the example of why is negative space is so important. Number 1, it can add interest and is an excellent way to draw attention of your work of art. A good balance between great negative space and intrigue will cause the viewer to desire more time to look at your work of art. Number 2, it gives the eyes a place to rest, thereby adding to subtle appeal of composition. The equal amounts of both negative and positive are considered by many to be good design. That's why negative space are very important for creating composition that are balanced and unified.
So, we come now to the form. Form. It is an element of visual art that is a shape in three-dimensional and encloses volume. Includes height, width, length, and also the depth. So, form is the physical volume of a shape and the space that it occupies. This is generally refers to sculptures, architectures, paintings, or any 3D surfaces, but may also relate to the illusion of 3D and 2D surface or flat surface such as shapes. So, form is a 3D, three-dimensional figure as opposed to a shape, which is two-dimensional or flat. Visual artists usually use light and shadow effects to create the illusion of three-dimensional form. So three-dimensional form can be model, or this is what we call the added form. It can also be carved, or what we call the subtracted form, and can also be constructed or the built form. So there are two types of form as an element of visual arts, wherein form can be geometric and form can be organic. Let's go to the first type of form, which is the geometric form. So geometric form are forms that are mathematical, precise, and can be named, as in the basic geometric forms such as sphere, cube, pyramid, cone, and cylinder. Just for example, a circle becomes sphere in 3D or three-dimensional form. A square becomes a cube. A triangle becomes a cone or a pyramid. This is what we pertain as geometric form. So the second type of form is the organic form. So organic form are those that are free-flowing, curvy, sinewy, and are not symmetrical or easily measurable or cannot be easily named. They most often occur in nature as in the shapes of flower, the leaves, the branches, the clouds, and many more. To further understand organic forms, they look natural or in nature. They are irregular and may seem flowing and unpredictable. The most obvious example of organic forms are realistic representations of the natural world or the living or the non-living things. So let's talk about the form when it comes to the sculpture, drawing, and painting. So usually we can really see this form in the three types or three examples of visual arts, which is the sculpture, drawing, and painting. So the first one is form in sculpture. So form is most closely tied to sculpture, since it is a three-dimensional art and has traditionally consisted almost primarily of form, with colors and textures being subordinate. So traditionally, forms could be viewed from all sides, called sculpture. Forms in sculpture is considered as the closest representation of form because it looks like that form as an element of visual arts was being put into reality. So form in sculpture can be categorized or can be open or can be a closed form. So there are two categories of form when it comes to sculpture. So the first one is the open form and the second one is the closed form. So the first one, the open form, is transparent, revealing its structure and therefore has a more fluid and dynamic relationship with the ambience of space. So the second one is the closed form. It relates to the form of solid opaque mass. Even spaces exist within the form they are contained and confined. Has an inward directed focus in the form. It is isolated from the ambience of space. So in short, a sculpture that is not a solid mass is considered as open from sculpture. It may have holes or empty space that also becomes part of the artwork, and on the other hand, we can call sculpture as closed form when it is solid, no holes, and self-contained. So that is the two categories of form in sculpture. So let's now come to the form in drawing and painting. So form in drawing and painting refers to the illusion of three-dimensional form is conveyed through the use of lighting and shadows, and the rendering of value and tone. So shape is defined by the outer contour of an object, which is how we first perceive it and begin to make sense of it, but light, value, and shadow help to give an object a form and context in space so that we can fully identify it. So for example, assuming a single light source on a sphere, and the highlight is where the light source hits directly. The midtone is the middle value on the sphere where the light does not hit directly. The core shadow is the area on the sphere that the light does not hit at all and is the darkest part of the sphere. The cast shadow is the area on the surrounding surfaces that is blocked from the sunlight by the object. Reflected highlight is the light that is reflected back up onto the object from the surrounding objects and surfaces. With these guidelines as to light and shading in mind, any simple shape can be drawn or painted to create the illusion of three-dimensional form. So that is what we call, or that is how we can see form in drawing and painting. So, in conclusion to form pertains the way that a shape or a physical configuration occupies space. For a three-dimensional work of art like a sculpture or work of architecture, form is the shape, structure, and the arrangement of components of art like length, width, and depth of a shape. So be reminded that form will always be part of art. Form will always be seen in the art.
So okay, what is texture? Texture refers to the surface quality or feeling of an object. It could be soft, rough, or smooth, and etc. There we have two ways on perceiving texture using our senses. First, we have our sense of sight. Second is our sense of touch. To make it clear for you why I've said that sense of touch and sense of sight is the way how we can perceive texture, let us now talk about the two types of texture, the tactile texture and the implied texture. Tactile texture or actual texture, it can be felt with our sense of touch. It can be found in natural materials that we can find around us. One of the example of it is the leaf, a basket, and wall. Even the brush strokes used in a painting, it can create a textured surface that we can both felt and see. The building up of painting on the surface of the canvas or board creates the actual texture. One of the best example of this is the painting of Vincent van Gogh. Implied or visual texture refers to the type of texture in art which we cannot felt by touch, but which resemblance is instead achieved through the masterful use of tools and materials.
Another element of visual art is value. Value is defined as the lightness or darkness of tones or colors. In other words, it is how light or dark given color or hue is, and can be better understood when they are visualized in scale or gradient, or the amount of light reflected from a surface. Rather than in artwork, mas madaling maintindihan ang value if in a scale form since naka-arrange na siya from lightest to darkest tone. Value is more important than color. White is the lightest value while black is the darkest. And the value halfway between these extremes or in between this light, white and black is called middle gray. Even if your design only consisted of one color, you could vary the value of color to create depth and contrast into your artwork. There is two contrasting value, which is the high contrast and the low contrast. The high contrast images or artworks have few tonal values in between stronger hues like black and white, yung tinatawag na middle gray. For example, in this photography by Kenneth Josephson consists only of few tonal values, which is mostly black and white, so this is an example of high contrast. While in this Nicholas Nixon photography, makikita natin na madaming tones ng gray or middle gray ang bumubuo dito. And this is a great example of low contrast artwork. Value is more important than color to achieve a successful artwork, specifically painting. But value is not only limited to grayscale. Yung tinatawag na grayscale is a scale with only white, different hues of gray and black. So there is also the so-called monochromatic scale. Monochromatic value scale is one color with different values. Mono means one, which explains that you use one color and different values. You have three colors to have a monochromatic color scheme. You have a pure hue white and a complement color. Yung monochromatic scheme is binubuo ng isang kulay to its lightest, then to the darkest. Unlike sa grayscale, monochromatic value scale can have middle tone of brown, red, blue, or any color. So let's go on with the composition of the value. The tint. Tint is adding white in a hue or color para magkaroon siya ng lightest value. Then, shade. It is adding black in a color to be darker in value. So, when creating a value scale, for example, for red color, you can start with the middle, for example, red, then add white to create the lighter side, and black, a small amount of black at a time to make it darker. Again, value contrast is where light values are placed next to dark values to create contrast or strong differences. Value scale is a scale that shows the gradual change in value from its lightest value, white, to its darkest value, black. So, we have the high key and low key of value. High key is where the picture is all light values, and the low key where the picture is all dark values. In conclusion, value is used to create a focal point within a painting or drawing. The human eye is immediately drawn to a light element against a dark element. This creates the focal point of interest. And to create the illusion of depth, gradation, values are also used. Areas of light and dark
give it three-dimensional illusions of form, subject matter, just like these shapes. Here are some examples of artworks showing value and texture, and the value